Welcome to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King, and this is Extra 106.3, and this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today's table topic is redistricting explained. So why are we talking about redistricting today? Well, recently, President Trump announced that he has directed the Department of Commerce to conduct a new U.S. census that excludes undocumented immigrants from the population count.
Escalating redistricting battle between red and blue states, he's floating a new plan that could dramatically change the country's congressional maps. Hello, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith in for Harris, and this is the Faulkner Focus. So Trump revealed yesterday that he ordered his administration to work on a, quote, new and highly accurate census based on modern-day facts and figures. He added, quote, people who are in our country illegally will not be counted in the census. Vice President J.D. Vance called out the census.
California has way more House seats than it should because they have such a high population of illegal aliens. So they get rewarded for welcoming illegal aliens into their state, giving them federal benefits, actually asking the taxpayers of states like Ohio to subsidize them. And then those same taxpayers in Ohio and Indiana and elsewhere, they have fewer congressional representatives because of what California has allowed to happen. That's ridiculously unfair.
Now, this proposal marks a significant departure from long-standing census practices, which have always counted all residents regardless of immigration status and was conducted, I believe, every 10 years. But during this episode, we're going to dive into this subject because I do not want you to hear bits and pieces and not be able to adequately defend why this move is necessary. So why does this matter? Well, to be simple and simply put it, the census is crucial because it's used to determine congressional representation. Considering the census tracks everyone, documented as well as undocumented alike, we can believe this is happening because the census excludes questions that will help identify status, because they feel that it could cause many who are legal to not participate in the census. And to be honest, I think that sounds absolutely ridiculous. But another argument that I kind of understand is that many of these people who are going door to door conducting the census feel that they can be placed in danger because they are not ICE agents. So asking about status may lead them or put them in a position where they now have to justify why, or someone may get spooked and do something that may be harmful or dangerous. And considering the fact that we have over 4 million legal immigrants that we can track in our country, excluding undocumented immigrants from the count, this could significantly impact states like California, Florida, and Texas in how they draw their district lines. And let's keep in mind, we're also going through a mass deportation as well, which also affects the numbers. So let's break down what redistricting actually is. Redistricting is the process of redrawing legislative district boundaries according to population changes. This occurs typically every 10 years after the U.S. Census to ensure that each district roughly has an equal amount of people in its population or in the district, providing what we call fair representation for everyone. Now, it sounds pretty straightforward, but it has a profound impact on political representation, potentially shifting the balance of power in Congress, and that's why understanding this process is vital. With the latest census data, there's an active conversation around redistricting as states like Texas, Florida, North Carolina, and even Georgia, those with the most significant population shifts, which are these states, are expected to possibly redraw their districts. This could result in some states gaining or losing seats, directly influencing the political landscape. So how does this redistricting actually occur? Well, here's a quick breakdown. So post-census, so you do the census and you have the people that go door to door to ask people, certain questions to try to get an accurate count of how many people are here in the United States. Post-census, detailed population data is released. And this indicates how populations have shifted within each state. Using that data, each state is tasked with redrawing its congressional district boundaries. And this is typically done by state legislators, though there are some states who depend on using independent or bipartisan commissions to minimize partisan influence. Redistricting still has the responsibility to comply with federal laws, including the Voting Rights Act, to prevent racial discrimination. Additionally, there are efforts that are made that has to try to keep these districts geographically compact as well as fair as possible while respecting existing political and community boundaries. Once the new district maps are drawn, they typically require approval by state authorities or the commissions that I talked about. Then the approved maps will then be used for the next decade of congressional elections. So it seems pretty straightforward and direct, but it's one of the most controversial issues because of what we call gerrymandering. Simply put, gerrymandering is the process of drawing electoral district boundaries in a way that favors one political party over the other. The goal is to influence election outcomes by manipulating the shape or the composition of these districts. It's been around for over a century. So since 1812, to be exact, when Massachusetts Governor Eldridge Gerry approved a redistricting map that seemed to resemble a salamander, hence the term gerrymander. This practice has evolved from a regional tactic into a tool used to entrench political power, often at the expense of fair representation and the will of people. So gerrymandering isn't a new phenomenon. Historically, both parties have kind of played the game. But drawing districts to protect their incumbents or to sway elections ends up hurting all of us. It's an issue deeply rooted in political strategy, but it undermines the core principle of democracy, which is fair, free elections based on the true will of the people. So over the years, we've seen gerrymandering reach new levels, sometimes creating bizarre, sprawling districts that don't resemble communities at all. It's a rigged system that puts partisan interests above honest representation. Today, many states still allow legislators to draw their district lines using sophisticated software and data to shape districts. This often results in what we call safe seats, where the outcome is almost predetermined, either Democrat or Republican, and it reduces the competitiveness of elections. It happens on both sides, and it's not right no matter who does it. And I happen to believe that it hurts the voters more than we know because it makes candidates extremely lazy. They feel as though they have it in the bag, so they don't have to campaign, they don't have to speak to voters, they don't have to knock on doors, they don't have to put in any money, they don't have to raise any money to make phone calls or put up any type of signs or anything of that nature. And the hope is that their voting base will simply vote for them because they vote along party lines. Worse yet, gerrymandering can marginalize independent voters and minority voters and skew the political landscape for decades. So let's talk about some recent examples. In New York, recent redistricting saw Democrats drawing highly controversial, heavily gerrymandered districts that favored their candidates, creating these safe districts with all of these bizarre shapes designed to lock in power. The district that stretches across multiple communities with no clear natural boundaries, it is a textbook case of gerrymandering at work. And it's not just New York. In California, the Democrat-controlled state legislature has also been accused of drawing districts that heavily favor their party, often at the expense of fair competition, meaning there's no competition at all. Most cases, Republicans won't even run in a district that has a heavy Democrat bent due to this redistricting, and sometimes it happens vice versa. While California does have an independent commission, however, today, Governor Gavin Newsom is now trying to bypass the commission and put this responsibility in the hands of the Democrat-ran legislature. Take a listen.
Well, John, Governor Newsom made it clear he's fighting fire with fire. As a direct response, Newsom has pledged to move forward with plans for redistricting in California. He's also proposing putting forward a ballot measure that would bypass the independent redistricting commission for the next 3 midterm election cycles. And that includes this coming one in 2026. The California governor says he'll consider reverting to the existing system after 2030. Now, he held a briefing earlier. He called it election rigging. Here's what he told reporters.
Today is Liberation Day in the state of California. And as Senator Schiff said, Donald Trump, you have poked the bear, and we will punch back. Here's the good thing about California, folks. We're the size of 21 state populations combined. We're the 4th largest economy in the world. We're not a small, isolated state. I know they say don't mess with Texas. Well, don't mess with the great Golden State.
And what's interesting is Newsom's announcement comes despite new polling. It finds the majority of Californians, 64%, prefer redistricting handled by the independent commission. Only 36% of California voters support returning congressional redistricting authority to the state legislature. Now, Newsom's aim is to get the matter before California voters during a special election come this fall.
Now, here's the thing. If he gets his way, we can expect gerrymandering will be at the center. And gerrymandering isn't just about map drawing. Again, it's about who has power and whether your voice actually counts, whether your vote actually matters. When districts are manipulated like this, it can lead to a Congress that doesn't truly reflect the will of the people, and it ultimately erodes trust, it undermines our republic, and it discourages honest competition. So now that we've seen such a shift in our population and migration, not just across the border, but also from blue states to red states, after the break, I'm going to discuss the states that could see a major shift and talk a little bit about what that means. So we're just getting started. Do not leave the table. You're listening to the Janelle King Show right here on Extra 106.3. We'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. My name is Suzanne Guy, and this is the Church's Moment. There is an incredible opportunity to start a distinct pro-life ministry at your church. We started one at our church about 5 years ago, and the fruit has been tangibly beautiful. We do monthly meetings that educate and equip the body of believers on sanctity of human life issues from womb to tomb by bringing in and featuring different pro-life leaders from all over Georgia, as well as featuring different ministries like post-abortion healing ministries or foster care ministries. There are so many great community partners out there. And then the second part of this pro-life ministry is having a care team. This is an opportunity to show moms in crisis, moms in unplanned, unwanted, or crisis pregnancies that the church is the place to run to, that the church is a safe haven and a place to go for tangible help, real hope, true compassion, friendship, and discipleship, and yes, an opportunity to share the gospel in both word and deed. Brothers and sisters in Christ, will you consider starting a distinct pro-life ministry at your church? It's so easy. Please contact me today to find out how simple this is. You can contact me at my email, proverbs31:8@att.net. This is the Church's Moment.
Welcome back to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King. This is Extra 106.3, and this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today's table topic, redistricting explained. So redistricting is the process of redrawing electoral district boundaries that takes place typically every 10 years after the census to ensure that there's fair representation. But it has long been exploited through gerrymandering. Remember our governor, Mr. Jerry, who created his district to look like a salamander? Yeah, that's how we get gerrymandering. But manipulating district shapes to favor one party over another happens to happen on both sides of the aisle. We're not going to pretend like Republicans don't do it too. Democrats and Republicans have been accused of doing it. Okay. And here's the problem. When you do it for one, you can no longer try to hold the other accountable. So now you have this thing where you have Democrats who are saying, this is not fair. They shouldn't be gerrymandering. Now, there's no actual proof that anyone is gerrymandering. However, the assumption may be present, but you can't call them out and call us out when you're doing it too. This is why both parties should operate with integrity and with trust, and why both parties should operate in the way that they're supposed to. Creating these safe seats ultimately reduces competition. It marginalizes independent voters and sometimes minority voters, and it just creates a whole heap of problems. So recent examples that we've seen were in states like New York and California, who drew these irregular districts that were designed to lock in partisan advantage. As the population shift continued, like many of the people who were moving from blue states to red states, not to mention we have illegal migrants that were crossing the border, gerrymandering threatens the integrity of our elections and the voice of the people. However, we have to look at what's happening now, and we got to do something different. So today we're going to tackle this whole topic of redistricting, this crucial process that determines your political representation and can shift the balance of power in Congress. And I want you to be informed. I want you to be able to talk to your family, talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, and I want you to do it intelligently. So let's start with why we're talking about this. Well, there has been recent discussions that intensified this whole topic around redistricting because President Trump sent out a directive to the Department of Commerce to create a new census excluding undocumented immigrants from the count.
Escalating redistricting battle between red and blue states. He's floating a new plan that could dramatically change the country's congressional maps. Hello, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith in for Harris, and this is the Faulkner Focus. So Trump revealed yesterday that he ordered his administration to work on a, quote, new and highly accurate census based on modern day facts and figures. He added, quote, people who are in our country illegally will not be counted in the census. Vice President J.D. Vance called out the census.
California has way more House seats than it should because they have such a high population of illegal aliens. So they get rewarded for welcoming illegal aliens into their state, giving them federal benefits, actually asking the taxpayers of states like Ohio to subsidize them. And then those same taxpayers in Ohio and Indiana and elsewhere, they have fewer congressional representatives because of what California has allowed to happen. That's ridiculously unfair.
This will allow us to get an accurate picture of how many people we have here that are supposed to be here. Considering the fact that there's mass deportation going on, counting undocumented immigrants really throws off our numbers because at this point, we don't know how many are still here and how many are getting ready to leave. So this proposal challenges long-standing practices that could impact states like California, Florida, and Texas by changing their congressional representation. But this isn't just about excluding migrants. It's about understanding how migration overall affects our nation. Did you know that between 2010 and 2020, around 7 to 8 million migrants entered the United States legally and illegally? And it's really hard to know because it's really hard to track. And between 2020 and 2024, just 4 years, approximately 4.5 million migrants were encountered at the U.S.-Mexico border. That's 4.5 million illegal immigrants. So these numbers affect how we draw our district lines. It affects how we determine representation. Now, if we counted all these people, it may look like districts have an equal amount of people representing them. But now that most of these people need to go back or will be going back, that's going to significantly throw off our districts and our numbers. So we got to talk about this today because there's so much attention that is now on states that are most affected by these migrations. Based on population shifts, Texas, Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina are all on the radar. And each of these states are poised to gain additional seats due to the significant population growth. For instance, as of 2020, in the 2020 census, Texas has 38 congressional districts. With a rapid growth, Texas could gain up to 2 more seats. And what we're realizing now is that they're probably going to gain up to 5 more seats, increasing their seats to 43. Now, Florida, on the other hand, has also seen growth and is likely to gain possibly an additional seat, bringing it to 28 seats in 28 congressional districts in Congress. And right here in Georgia, we could also pick up a seat if we really looked at things and redid our lines as well as looked at our census. We could potentially increase its district from 14 congressional districts to 15 congressional districts, considering the fact that we have 1 million more people here since 2010. This is a real possibility. And between 2020 and 2024, the sizable population shifts that occurred will definitely change some things. So New York also saw significant out-migration, which means they had about 600,000 to 700,000 residents leave the state of New York and move to states like Florida.
Down agenda sure seems to have paid off. More than 600,000 new businesses opened in the Sunshine State last year, and that's more than twice the amount reported in blue state New York.
Wow. Fox News contributor Laura Trump, who moved her family to Florida, she's one of the ones that left. She is here to react. Good morning to you, Laura.
Good morning, guys. Great to be with you.
Well, it's so good to have you. This affects the tax base. This affects congressional seats as well. What's your reaction to this?
Yeah, you know, I lived in New York for about 14 years, and I've actually spent quite a bit of time this summer back in New York, and it's really amazing when I walk around and go to the places that used to be part of my everyday routine, coffee shops, gyms, restaurants. A lot of them are closed. They're never reopening post-pandemic in New York. And, you know, Ainsley, you just referenced this. We know that people during the COVID pandemic left blue states in search of red states, so much so that New York and California lost congressional seats. Florida and Texas actually gained congressional seats. But turns out businesses did the same thing. Onerous lockdowns and mandates are not good to help businesses flourish, but allowing people the freedom to make their own decisions about themselves, about their businesses, turns out to be the way to go. It doesn't hurt that you have states like Florida that have a much better tax situation and fewer regulations than a lot of Democrat-run states. That also was a very welcoming thing, I think, to small businesses and entrepreneurs. And obviously, we see what a big change this has made across the board. I live in Palm Beach County, and I can tell you it's a very different story. It's almost the opposite of what I've seen in New York. I've seen restaurants opening, things happening at a rapid pace. Things are being built down there at, I think, a record pace right now. And I assume it's because it's a much more welcoming environment for businesses. The funny thing is, some people apparently didn't get the memo in these blue states because you still have places in California that are putting back in place these ridiculous mask mandates, making it even harder for businesses that have had to suffer through the pandemic to get back on their feet. It's crazy to see, but I assume it's just going to mean more people are going to leave blue states for red states as we go forward.
In California, they're opening up drugs. They're opening up open drug areas. So it was a disaster in San Francisco. So let's try it in Los Angeles. Talk about growth. Here's the numbers. New York is down 365,336. Florida's up 242,941. I'll add to that. New York lost 120,000 kids from their enrollment in the school system. So they're out of here, or the ones that aren't have said they're bailing on the public school system because they know how woke it is.
This does shift the amount of people that are now in these new states, and it also lessens the people that are in New York. Conversely, states like Florida and Texas have experienced an influx of these residents, with Florida gaining roughly 1.5 million, Texas about 1.2 million new residents. This movement has spurred the conversation about whether we should adjust the makeup of Congress to reflect these population changes. Georgia, as I stated before, has also seen huge increases, with estimates suggesting 500 to 600,000 new residents have come into this state between 2020 and 2024. And what is our attractiveness, especially here in Georgia? Well, we do have a good job market. affordable living, and just a better quality of life. And that tends to be the case when people leave blue states and move to red states. Currently, Republicans hold about 222 seats in the House. With redistricting on the table, these shifts could see the GOP gain some seats or lose seats depending on how the elections turn out, but there's a good probability that they may gain some seats. So favorably redrawing lines might boost the Republican control, while the competitive districts could give an advantage to Democrats who are underscoring the intricate play that is at hand. So in other words, if you have a bunch of Republicans who say, I'm going to gerrymander these districts and make it where it looks like it's all Republican, Democrats may take that and use it as a talking point against us and then get voters, particularly the independent voters that are in those districts, to decide to not go with the Republican and vote with the Democrat. Either way, it ultimately creates competition. Everybody has to work. And considering that all these states are potentially open to change, we are now watching Texas as they are in the process of going through the redistricting process. So as a result, you have a lot of unhappy Democrats, so much so that they tried to halt the process altogether. Ultimately, they ended up fleeing the state to try to prevent a quorum, which means that you have to have a certain amount of Democrat and Republicans present in order to actually start a session. To do any business, there has to be a certain number of people present. So by them leaving the state, it kind of blocked that, and it halted everything. And it halted the House's ability to conduct business as a whole. But where are we now? What is the latest on the Texas update? Take a listen.
The House passed the party's redistricting plan after a weeks-long deadlock sparked by Democrats breaking quorum. Now, today, the maps, which could add up to 5 new GOP-leaning districts, head to the state Senate. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle were sharply divided on this bill moving forward.
There's no account for values, and that's what's most important. The people of Texas have spoken. In the last several cycles, minority voters are trending Republican, and that is how this map is drawn. It's perfectly legal. Of course they're going to take us to court, but we will win.
We're going to shout that we won't back down. We're going to continue to move forward, and we're going to continue to fight. Because when we fight, we win.
And CBS News Executive Director of White House and Politics, Finn Gomez, joins us now. Finn, good morning. So now that the redistricting bill is heading to a vote, how soon could it make it to Governor Abbott's desk?
Michael, yeah, it will happen fast. It could happen as early as today or tomorrow. The new congressional maps that would add those 5 Republican-friendly seats to the Texas congressional map now goes to the Texas Senate, which is also dominated by Republicans. It then goes to Abbott, who has been pushing for this redraw, and the Republican has made no doubt that he will sign this new map. Important to remember that this all really started from the White House. President Trump has been very public about his call for Texas Republicans to make these changes and posted about it last night on social media.
So there you have it. All the time that was wasted, all the energy, all the taxpayers' funds were absolutely for nothing. The map is still happening. That being said, one of the most important questions that I think we have to ask ourselves is, what does this mean for voters? What does this mean for us? Well, we keep hearing from elected officials who are angry about the possibility of having to campaign, and I'm like, are you serious? But now they actually for real have to campaign, or they may lose their seats altogether. And it truly feels like the conversation around representation is only mentioned when it appears to affect the politician directly. Instead of saying, okay, cool, now we have these new districts, let me just go in there and introduce myself and get a lot of these new people to see what happened and how things are going. No, they're complaining about it. And you know, I have to be reminded, there was a candidate, MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene. I remember when Marjorie Taylor Greene district was redrawn because of the court said something about our maps were weird or something. So anyway, they made us redraw them. And I must say, I didn't hear her complain at all. She picked up a portion of a Democrat portion of the state in Cobb County, and there wasn't much complaining. What I saw was her going into Cobb County, and she ended up introducing herself and meeting people and talking to people. And truth be told, if you speak with Marjorie Taylor Greene and you listen to her, she actually did an interview recently with Megyn Kelly that I thought was really, really good. But if you listen to her, you'll see that she's not as crazy as they try to paint her out to be. So I'm not surprised that people liked her. Not to mention, she's one of the few congressional people that actually holds town halls, which I thought is also really, really good. And I think people like that. So when you have states like Texas, Florida, and even here in Georgia gaining seats, it means that those states are growing and that their political influence is expanding. And now this could lead to more Republicans in Congress, which is good news for all of us who want to see strong conservative representation. But it also means that we have to pay attention to who's running for office and participate in primaries so we can ensure that we get the right person. Now, on the flip side, states like New York may find themselves losing seats. When you have about 600 to 700,000 residents that have moved out over the recent year, this means their influence in Congress could decline. This can weaken their voice as well as their voice on national issues, and it can shift power away from the traditional liberal strongholds, and possibly we can see some wins and some gains happening in these Democrat states. So what does all of this mean for you personally? Fundamentally, it's just about representation. It's all about ensuring that your voice gets to Washington, which is the place where policies are prioritized. So you can expect a few things that's going to happen. First, the potential shift in balance of power, meaning more seats in conservative-leaning states, which could bolster Republican influence. This might also mean more conservative policies coming out of Congress and possibly more responsive local representation from many Americans. But secondly, you can also see that there's a different priorities may emerge. States with growing populations will push for issues important to their residents like gun rights, economic growth, and border security. It's also a chance for voters in these states to influence which issues get more attention. So finally, redistricting can lead to a more competitive districts, or they can lead to safer seats. We just really don't know. Either way, it impacts who will run, it impacts who will win, and it impacts what you get to debate about in Congress. So while you can't do a whole lot when it comes to the actual drawing of the lines, as a voter, you can influence some things. And it starts with staying informed and engaged. I would suggest supporting candidates who believe in fair, transparent redistricting procedures, who also believes in having strong and clear integrity when it comes to our elections, so that when districts are drawn fairly, your vote truly counts. Remember, every election has a ripple effect. So by choosing leaders who prioritize fair representation, fair accountability, election integrity, you can help shape a Congress that truly represents the people, your voice, and your values. As voters, we cannot be derelict in our duty. We've got to wake up. We've got to stop thinking about feelings. We got to stop supporting people because we've known them for a long time, and support people that can get the job done, people who have a good plan, and people who you respect. And as we watch these shifts in congressional seats, know this: your vote, your voice matters more than ever. And it's up to us to stay engaged, to demand fairness, and to make sure that our republic remains strong and honest. So now that we have a better understanding of the redistricting fight, so after the break, I want to leave with you my thoughts on why I believe that this is just the beginning, that this fight here is the beginning of something else. And I'm going to share with you what I think that something else is. As we head into midterms, we have to stay more vigilant than ever. So you're listening to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King. This is Extra 106.3. Don't leave the table.
Hello, everyone. My name is Suzanne Guy, and this is the Church's Moment. There is an incredible opportunity to start a distinct pro-life ministry at your church. We started one at our church about 5 years ago, and the fruit has been tangibly beautiful. We do monthly meetings that educate and equip the body of believers on sanctity of human life issues from womb to tomb by bringing in and featuring different pro-life leaders from all over Georgia, as well as featuring different ministries like post-abortion healing ministries or foster care ministries. There are so many great community partners out there. And then the second part of this pro-life ministry is having a care team. This is an opportunity to show moms in crisis, moms in unplanned, unwanted, or crisis pregnancies that the church is the place to run to, that the church is a safe haven and a place to go for tangible help, real hope, true compassion, friendship, and discipleship, and yes, an opportunity to share the gospel in both word and deed. Brothers and sisters in Christ, will you consider starting a distinct pro-life ministry at your church? It's so easy. Please contact me today to find out how simple this is. You can contact me at my email, proverbs318@att.net. This is the church's moment.
Welcome back to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King. This is Extra 106.3, and this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today's table topic is redistricting explained. So before the break, in the other segments, because you're at the tail end, but don't worry, you can always go back and listen to the replay. We covered the importance of redistricting and its impact on our republic. We explain what redistricting is and how it often is manipulated through gerrymandering and how it happens on both sides of the aisle, so we can't act like one is better than the other. However, there has been recent controversies in states like New York and California that highlight how these partisan districts can distort representation. We also discuss how population shifts, especially in states like Texas, Florida, and even right here in Georgia, are leading to new congressional seats, which could strengthen our conservative influence. And finally, we emphasize the importance of voters staying informed, participating in elections, and supporting fair and transparent redistricting processes to ensure that we have true representation and that we maintain the integrity of our republic. So I want to close with my heart of the matter and on why I think that we have to stay vigilant. Because in my opinion, this topic goes beyond, far beyond lines on a map. It's really about control, and it's about shaping the country's future. And I'm talking about the redistricting battles in Texas, California, and we may see some in other states. And why these fights are absolutely pivotal as we head into the 2026 midterms. Because on the surface, redistricting might seem mundane. Simply the process of redrawing electoral districts, but don't be fooled. Because this is not just about maps. It's about who holds the reins of power. It's about sending a clear, strategic message as we approach the critical 2026 midterm elections. Both Texas and California have been at the forefront of this struggle. And in Texas, we see a state that is poised with opportunity, a place where conservative values have prospered and driven growth. And on the flip side, you have California, which has the battle and equality of fierceness. And we're always trying to defend and we're always in the struggle as conservatives. But there is a defensive struggle, a challenge against liberal strongholds that seek to entrench our republic. So why now? Why are Democrats focusing their effort this early? Well, of course, they don't want to lose seats and all that stuff, but I believe that it's also about momentum. You see, they aim to plant seeds of doubt about our leadership, attempting to weaken our resolve and build momentum against not just the Trump administration, but also against conservatives across the board. You see, the left thinks that they can sway public opinion by painting a redistricting picture and painting redistricting today as this partisan game that only the Republicans are participating in and that the Republicans are doing. But the truth is, they're really trying to rewrite the rules in their favor, hoping to tilt future elections. Because in reality, it's about creating these challenges where they see us in our strength and where they see us unified and resilient. Painting a picture that the Republican Foundation is bad at its core. Because they know that the whole concept of Trump is bad, that whole narrative is quickly coming to an end. You see, the Democrats understand the power of momentum. They're starting early. They're strategizing. They're aligning resources. They're throwing narratives at the wall to see what sticks, all hoping to build a wave that can unseat strong Republican leaders and weaken our conservative influence, our ability to enact policies that preserve our American freedoms and promote economic growth and support law and order. They don't want that. They want to weaken it. But we won't let that happen. We know what's at stake. We have the strength of the American people on our side. 2024 showed us that we are mostly conservative as a nation. And the only way that we can destroy this picture is by not countering the misguided, ill-informed attacks with truth. It's time we send our own message. The message that we see through their strategy and that we're ready to counter it. What we can do as Republicans, first, we must recognize that redistricting. First, we must recognize redistricting for what it truly is, a pivotal battleground for control. Do not assume, because the districts appear to be red, that the votes will be also. We have to campaign harder than ever. We have to outwork them. We have the better message. President Trump is doing all he can to strengthen this economy and put us in a good position for 2026. But we do not have the support of the mainstream media. And although they're calming down a little bit, we have to be our own voice, talking to our neighbors, talking to the person in line at the grocery store, our family members, and whoever is willing to listen. We must stay informed. We have to stay engaged, and we have to be proactive. We got to support leaders who fight for fair representation and policies that reflect our values. Make no mistake, going into these midterms, our unity and momentum is key. So let's continue to champion conservative principles. Let's stand tall against the narrative being spun. Let's remind everyone what we really stand for: freedom, prosperity, safety, equal access or opportunity, and most importantly, honesty. Remember, this fight isn't just about districts. It's about the soul of our nation. And these maps are just the beginning. Let's choose leadership and representation that genuinely reflects the will of the people. Because together, we can ensure that as we head into the 2026 midterms, that our voice is clear, that our resolve is unshaken, and that our vision for America's future is unyielding. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, stay unafraid, stay unapologetic, and never, ever, ever stop seeking the truth.